Hi there. So I am Angie with Conscious Parenting. And for lesson number 3, we are going to talk all about human design. So I'm trying to share my screen here, but give me just a second. All right, let's see. So share and present. All right. So, like I said, so for conscious parenting, lesson 3, we're going to talk all about human design, but I'm not going to be sticking to the slides today. The first lesson we went through seeing the potential, where I really encouraged you to create a bigger goal, look into the future, imagine what you want life to be like, because what you imagine is totally possible. But if you can't see it as possible, you're going to stay stuck where you are. That's just the way that life works. It's the way the mind works. Then in lesson 2, I went all through child development. I broke down different age groups. So I hope that you found some nuggets of, I don't know, maybe new information or new ways of looking at your kids, or perhaps good reminders about the things that your kids are going through. So, like I said, today we're actually going to go through human design. And so, how I'm going to do this today, which is a little bit different than we've done in the past, is I am going to share a different image. So, let's try this. All right. So, here we go. So, this is a body graph. It is a human design body graph. And for this lesson, I'm going to try to keep this short and sweet because there's so much to human design. So my plan is that for this lesson, so we're in lesson 3, but this will be the first part of lesson 3. I'm going to give you a broad overview of the body graph so that you understand a little bit about what you're looking at in general. And then for the follow-up parts to lesson 3, I'm going to break it down into different elements. So we'll go through type and the centers, profiles. So I'll break it down into some really important key elements that will help you understand your design better. But so here's the scoop about human design is it isn't another tool. When you understand your human design, it's a different way of being. Because prior to having this information, prior to learning about your unique human design, we as humans perceive that what's happening in our life is inevitable. We perceive that the experiences that we're having, the life that we're living, the circumstances, we perceive that that's just how our life is supposed to be. But when we start to understand human design, we start to realize how much more control we have over our circumstances. And I'm not saying that it's easy by any means, but it is worth the work. So, a little bit about human design. It was created back in, I think, 1987. Don't quote me on that, but by a man named Ra Uru Hu. There will be no quiz about this. You don't need to remember who it was who originally was given the idea of human design. So, human design itself is an assessment that is based on ancient wisdom, quantum physics, and a bit of spirit or universe or God, or however you perceive that has an impact on our soul. It takes all of those things together. It includes things like the Chinese I Ching, the Judaic Kabbalah, Eastern and Western astrology, and like I said, physics, and it pulls all of that together. And what happens is the moment that you're born, you get this map, a map of yourself, a map of your energetic needs, the way that you operate. This is why you could have a set of twins who are so very different because they were born slightly different apart from each other. There can be some differences, of course, if twins are born via C-section versus born naturally, that will have an influence on the time of birth, which then has an influence on your design. So as we go through the elements that are in here, and I want to make sure I don't miss anything, but we'll get to it later if I miss something today. So not a huge deal, but when I look at the elements of the design, here are the things I want to point out to you. So like I said, human design is very closely linked to the Chinese I Ching. So the Chinese I Ching is a system that looks at the human experience through 64 different lenses. There are 64 descriptions of interactions that humans have or experiences that humans have. And we can really take anything that we experience, any feelings or emotions or energies or fears, we can put them all into one of the 64, they're called gates. So every human design body graph, so this image here is called a body graph, and we all have the exact same configuration. I did want to share that they can look differently, but they're always the same. So for example, this is one version. This is the version that I currently have, which I might change. But this is another version. It's the exact same thing. It's just the shapes are a little different. The coloring is different. But when you look at the details of it, this is me. This is my design. And I have these 3 colored in. I have the same configuration of numbers on the sides. I have the same numbers circled or highlighted in any version that we look at. It's always the same if you put in your birth data. So it doesn't matter what format you use, it's always the same because it's there's a formula behind it. So I wanted to show you that even if you use somebody else's chart, you should always get the same data. You should never pull a second or a third chart and get different number configurations. You might get different vocabulary words. So that's something to keep in mind. For example, this one here at the bottom, I don't know if you can see it, but it says that I'm a generator, but this particular coach uses the word alchemist as her term for a generator. Where on this one, for example, I don't know if it has it on here, that has my birth data, but this one calls me a builder, a classic builder instead of a generator. And then on this one, it's probably farther down in the report, but this one calls me a generator. They're all the same thing, an alchemist, a builder, a generator. So when you look, as you're out researching different information to understand it better, just know that there might be different vocabulary terms, but your body graph is always your body graph. The configuration of your numbers will never change when you're looking at this is called your natal body graph, meaning the one that you were born with. There are, and we won't be getting into it in this lesson by any means, but our chart can have different overlays as we go through different stages in life. And so, for example, we've all heard of the midlife crisis phenomena, right? People talk about that. Well, there's some truth to it that around the age of 40, we experience a pretty significant energetic shift. So it doesn't change our design, but it puts an overlay of other energy that we're experiencing to help nudge us to the next stage of life. It happens again at 50 and at 60. But anyways, so this is my natal design, my human design. So like I said, this is called a body graph. The numbers on the body graph itself are always in the same configuration. So you could pull any person's body graph, use any software you want, and it will always have, for example, 64, 61, 63 in this top center. Or it will always have the same configuration of numbers, 36, 22, 37, 6, 49, 55, 30. Those will always be the numbers in that center. The difference is that person by person, some of us will have one number highlighted, all the numbers highlighted, none of the numbers highlighted. We'll have a different configuration of numbers highlighted or colored in or circled in our body graph because those numbers in our individual body graph correspond with the numbers on either the left side or the right side. And you can actually tell which side it's on based on the color of the line that's coming off of it. So this one, for example, my gate 64, I know automatically that it's on the right-hand side because it has a blue, it's called a hanging gate. It has a blue one. So on the way that I have this configured, I know that my 64 is over here somewhere. I see it right here, down here in the chart. That is true for anything that's on your chart. Is if it is circled here, it will be either on the left or the right and vice versa. If it's on the left or the right, it must also be circled in your body graph. Let's see, what else do I want to say about that? Oh, you'll notice that sometimes a gate, a hanging gate, will have two different colors. What that means is that you have that same number on both sides. So for example, I have 36, I have it up here, and I have it again here. I might also have it someplace else. Nope, I don't see it anyplace else, but I have it on both sides. Gate 33, for example, where it's also pink and blue on this chart, I have it up here, I have it down here, and I have it over here. So people often ask, what does that mean if you have it on your chart more than once? Well, to me, that means that the universe wants you to learn that lesson. Every gate, so these numbers are called gates. They're also called gene keys by a different gentleman named Richard Rudd, who took human design and just put it in a different visual, and he talks about the elements a little bit differently, but it's the same thing. So he calls them gene keys. Originally, they were called gates, or they are also called traits. So gate, trait, or gene key is any of the numbers 1 through 64. So the idea is that if you have the same number in your chart more than once, it's something to pay attention to. It's a lesson that you are here to learn. So that lesson 33, that's one of my biggest lessons in life, is me understanding what gate 33 is all about, because it shows up in my life again and again and again and again, and it will continue showing up in kind of an ugly way until I learn the lesson of it. So, and we'll talk more about what all of the individual elements mean, but I want you to have a broader kind of stand back image of what you're looking at. So we've talked about the configuration. We've talked about the individual gates. These shapes on here, they're called centers. There are 9 centers. Oh, that's what I forgot to say. Human design is also very closely linked to the chakra system. So the centers are very closely related to the chakras. So for example, this is your root center. It's related to the root chakra. Or this is the head and ajna center. They're related to the same chakras in the chakra system. So something to keep in mind also. And let's see. Oh, the other thing that I wanted to point out as we're looking at the body graph and just having a step back, broader picture view of what we're looking at is anytime that you see that a line is continuous, that it goes from one gate over to another gate, that they're connected, right? Anytime you have a gate that is defined or colored in, anytime you have a gate that's defined or colored in, that means the same thing, right? Defined. That means that it's in your design, it's part of your lesson plan in life. And it will always, anytime you see a circle, you will see that it always has a half of a colored line next to it. If the gate that is opposite your defined gate is also defined, it will create what's called a channel or a superpower. And so you can see here, for example, gate 59 is one of my gates. That's part of my design. It's over here in pink. It is connected to gate 6. I have gate 6 on both sides. So it's up here and it's over here. I have gate 6. So when they're connected, when one end meets up with the other end, their energy connects and flows through those two centers. It creates what's called a channel or a superpower, like I said. And anytime you have a superpower or a channel, it then creates what we call definition in the two centers that it connects. So the reason that this triangle center, it's called the emotional solar plexus, but the reason this center is colored in is because this channel connects the two of them. And the reason this center is colored in is because this channel connects the two of them. So what that means is that my energy in my design flows through my emotional solar plexus, through this channel and into my sacral. My energy flows through because of that channel, which gives definition here and definition here, or they're both colored in. I have the same thing here where this is kind of a wonky channel, but it's the same idea that this gate 57 has a few, this is the only configuration in the whole chart that's like this. All the rest of them are nice, simple lines like this. But this one, gate 57 could go up to 20. It could go over to 10, or it can go up and make a right turn over to 34. That's what mine does. But it's still a continuous flow of energy if we think about it in that way. So this is another one of my superpowers. I have two in my design, and those two superpowers connect my three defined centers. You might have one superpower, you might have seven. We're all so very uniquely different, and nothing is better or worse than the other. So that's the last big point that I want to share as I'm doing this very broad overview, is that everything in your design is a frequency. So we'll be talking about, like I said, we'll be talking about type and profile and open centers and defined centers and superpowers. We'll be talking about all of these things, and nothing in our design is good or bad. It just is. It is just an experience, but everything in our design is on a frequency scale. So when we think about, for example, let me think about gate 44, for example. It's one of my gates. It is my conscious sun. It is my most important for all of us. This top right-hand corner one is the most important gate in your entire chart. It is, it's called your sun. It's what you radiate out into the world. When you are grounded in who you are, this is what other people see. This is how you fulfill your purpose. So my gate 44 is all about patterns. But on the negative end of its own spectrum, it gets stuck in patterns and repeats things like banging your head against the wall and doing the same ridiculous thing over and over and over again and not learning the lesson. On the flip side, on the positive end of that exact same spectrum, this same gate 44 is all about recognizing patterns and helping others to recognize them also, to help others get unstuck from patterns. It's the same energy, it's the same story, but I have that power within me to notice now when I get stuck in the same loop over and over and over again, like a hamster in a wheel. I have the awareness now, because I've been studying me. I have the awareness to stop the pattern, recognize that it is getting in the way of whatever I'm trying to accomplish. And I have this beautiful gift to share my keen awareness about patterns with others, to help others break patterns. This is what I do in coaching. It's what I do in workshops when I'm working with people, is recognizing those patterns that people are getting stuck in. But that gate 44 isn't good or bad. It just is. I now have so much more awareness about my power over how I want to express it out in the world. And I don't get it right every time by any means, but I have this awareness that helps me take more control over it instead of being so victim to it. So I believe that that's all that I want to share about the human design body graph. Like I said, we'll be going so deeply into the elements. Oh, the other thing I wanted to share, and we'll be going more into this in future trainings, but just to bring your awareness, because people ask this often. So two things. One, so I said there are 64 numbers in here, but you'll notice that every number, so you have numbers 1 through 64 in some configuration. After every number is a decimal point and then another number. Well, the number after the decimal point is only numbers 1 through 6, and it's actually called the line. So for example, I would say this is gate 44, line 2, or this is gate 24, line 2. You won't see the number after the decimal in your chart here anywhere. It isn't part of this part of the chart. It is actually, we talk about it as a flavor. It's how it flavors. So what that really means is that this gate 44 that I was describing, in noticing patterns, getting stuck in patterns, breaking patterns, that's what gate 44 is all about. But there are 6 different ways that it can present itself, 6 different flavors. So you think about if you were making a dish of spaghetti, you could add garlic to it and it would taste one way. You could add oregano to it and it would taste a different way. You could add onions to it and it would taste a totally other way, right? Those flavors, it's still spaghetti, but adding a different flavor to it. And that's the idea with the lines, is that the two, for example, is a natural, and things come naturally easy. And oftentimes the two doesn't recognize their gifts. So that's how I present my gate 44, is as a natural who doesn't necessarily always notice how easy things can be for me in certain circumstances, of course, but in particular with this gate 44. So I did want to share that. And the other thing that people often ask about are, what in the world are these wild elements on the side? So these are, and they can look very different depending on the software you use. Like I said, these are related to astrology. If you look at this one, this is a business way to run a chart. And this one has letters that stand for something, but these elements are the same thing. And then this one is similar to the first one I showed you. So what these all represent, whether you have the letters or the elements, is that they represent celestial bodies. So I'm not going to go through all of them, but just to give you a sense, for example, this is the sun, this is the Earth, this is the moon, this is Mercury, this is Venus. So those are just a few of them. These are the nodes, the north and south nodes. So each of these elements represents something in the universe. And the idea is that these celestial bodies were moving through one of the 64 gates at the moment you were born. So we're not going to get a ton into that because clearly I stumble over that part a little bit, but they do represent different things and they mean different things. So for example, Earth is how you stay grounded. Your sun is how you radiate out into the world when you're fulfilling your purpose. The moon is what drives you. Mercury is how you communicate. So those are just some of the elements, but I wanted you to know that they do all actually have a purpose. But that is like digging deep in the weeds of your human design. And we won't be getting through these elements in the first few lessons by any means, because there's so many other details to get through in the basics before we get to that point. So I think that that is all that I wanted to share. So I look forward to digging deep into type and profile and the centers and superpowers in the next couple of lessons. So I will see you soon.